What if I told you that a year from now you could walk past your reflection and not even recognize the man staring back? A man no longer driven by fear, no longer ruled by excuses, no longer held captive by delay, but a man of force, of fire, of absolute command. Listen to me now. This is not inspiration. This is reconstruction. And if you have the courage to finish what we start here today, then the man you were will not survive it. The world will see a new creature, a man reborn by vow, by fire, and by relentless decision. So stay with me, and together we will kill the old you. There comes a time in the life of every man when he must face a silent reckoning. It is not a moment announced by trumpets, nor does it arrive with ceremony. It is quiet, eerily so. A stillness that settles upon him when he looks in the mirror and cannot find himself. Not truly. He sees a face familiar in structure but vacant in spirit. A man who once dreamed, now dulled. A man who once desired, now delayed. A man who once declared war on his limitations, now whispers apologies to them. That moment, that great and solemn hour, marks the beginning of transformation. But let me be unmistakably clear. Before a man may rise, he must first die. I do not speak of the body, no, I speak of the self, the worn identity you have carried like a coat, stitched by teachers who did not understand power, by parents who feared too much, by friends who praised your comfort more than your calling. This self must perish, not with sorrow, but with intent, not with mourning, but with command. Excuses as the armor of the fading man. You may recognize him by the way he speaks. I'll start when the timing is right. I'm not ready yet. I'm waiting for clarity, for energy, for permission. These are not delays. These are funeral hymns. They are the lullabies sung by men who have allowed their potential to rot beneath the surface of their delay. Excuses are not shields. They are chains. Chains forged by indecision and polished with false logic. Every time you say, I can't, what you truly mean is, I won't. And every I won't is a quiet declaration of allegiance to the old self, the version of you that must now be eradicated if you are to become anything of force. Most men do not live 70 years. They live 1 year 70 times. They carry the same thoughts, the same fears, the same voice in their head that said, maybe tomorrow, for decades. They decorate that voice with new clothes, new surroundings, new distractions, but the man within remains unchanged. He ages, but he does not evolve. He adds responsibilities, but not power. He gains opinions, but not clarity. He becomes busier, but not better. This is not life. This is a slow procession toward regret. And regret is the graveyard of the powerful. It is the echo chamber of the man who almost became. When you begin to awaken, the mirror becomes a weapon. You no longer see the same reflection. The old face becomes a stranger. You are not proud of him, nor do you hate him. You simply know he cannot survive the next season of your life. You begin to speak to yourself differently, not in soft tones of self-soothing, but in declarations of departure. This is no longer who I am. This identity does not match my destiny. This reflection is expired. And that, my dear reader, is when the death begins. Because the most powerful change does not begin with a new tactic, a new book, or a new strategy. It begins with the funeral of the man you were never meant to remain. You must burn the old blueprint. Write this down and never forget it. You will not become a new man by stacking new habits atop an old identity. You must destroy the structure, your beliefs about your capabilities, your assumed limitations, your rituals of procrastination, your internal permission slips for delay, your hidden worship of comfort. All of it must go. Do not tidy it, do not fold it, do not explain it. Burn it. The man you once were was not born to last. He was born to bring you here, but he has no place in the next chapter. You do not renovate identity. You replace it. Consider now the great Abraham Lincoln, a man carved not from luxury, but from loss, from failure, from pressure that would have drowned weaker souls. Do you suppose the man who presided over a broken nation was the same man who suffered political defeat after defeat? who buried his beloved, who endured the weight of melancholy, who questioned his own worth in private solitude? Number. He was not the same man. Lincoln shed his skin. Each sorrow cut him. Each failure refined him. Each sleepless night made the fire burn deeper. He could have hidden, he could have excused his past, but instead, he allowed it to kill the version of himself that would not have survived the mission ahead. The Lincoln who carried the nation through war was not born by fortune. He was born by death, the death of his excuses, the death of his softer self. And so must you die. The pressure that you feel now, the dissatisfaction, the hunger, the frustration, is not the enemy. It is the invitation. It is the signal that you are ready to burn the bridge to your past self. And if you are not ready to burn that bridge, I tell you this: you are not ready for greatness. Now repeat after me, not once, but until your voice begins to shake the chains of your conditioning. I am the type of man who no longer asks for permission to transform. I am the type of man who burns excuses before they burn opportunity. I am the type of man who buries hesitation and walks forward anyway. I am the type of man who kills delay before delay kills destiny. I am the type of man who no longer identifies with who he was, but who he is becoming. Speak these aloud, not as poetry, not as theory, but as command, because you must understand this moment is not ceremonial. It is mechanical. You are pulling the lever that initiates the death of the man you were trained to be and the birth of the man you were born to become. There is no turning back after this, and that is the beauty of it. In this place, there is no need for motivation, only momentum. And momentum is not granted, it is claimed. So take your vow now, out loud, with fire, with power, with no retreat. I do not wish to change, I command it. I do not hope to evolve, I demand it. I no longer carry the man I was, I bury him today. And now we begin, not with tips, not with tricks, but with transformation. The old self is dead. Let us now proceed to build the one who will never be buried again. There exists a war more dangerous than any fought with gunpowder or steel, and it is waged not in the trenches of the earth, but within the 4 inches between a man's ears. It is a war of thought, of direction, of mental command, and most men, without ever realizing it, lose this war before they've even recognized it has begun. The tragedy is not in the defeat, it is in the ignorance. For while they assume their thoughts are their own, they fail to see that their minds have become occupied territory, not governed by purpose, but possessed by noise, fear, delay, and distraction. The mind, when left untrained, does not serve the man. It rules him. And worse, it does not rule with vision or discipline, but with suggestion and impulse, shaped by the environment, by the unspoken expectations of mediocre companions, by the voices of those who never built anything but limitations. The untrained mind is a magnet for drift, a sponge for confusion. It allows every passing opinion to enter, every idle emotion to dictate the course of the day, every childhood pattern to whisper, "This is who you are," even when you know in your bones you were born for more. Thought, my friend, is not neutral. It either builds your life or betrays it. There is a force, ancient and silent, which I have studied and named hypnotic rhythm. It is not a curse or a superstition. It is law. It is the invisible current that pulls a man into sameness, into comfort, into smallness, without ever raising its voice. It does not strike in sudden blows. No, it operates in the daily repetition of insignificant thoughts that, over time, become identity. Hypnotic rhythm is the slow erosion of possibility by the steady trickle of mediocrity. It is the law that says, if you do not decide your dominant thoughts, they will be decided for you. And those thoughts, once repeated often enough, will wrap around you like a vine, gentle at first, then binding, then suffocating. This is why the battle must be fought not once, but daily, not occasionally, but continually, and not with reaction, but with command. The man who masters his thoughts masters his world, for the outer world is but a reflection of the inner. Let no man deceive himself into believing that his outer struggles are separate from his inner passivity. You must choose now and forever to become the architect of your mind. That means choosing your dominant thought each day before the world has a chance to hand you one. That means repeating what you have chosen aloud, not weakly, not theoretically, but with emotional intensity, until the subconscious accepts it as law. For the subconscious does not respond to information, it responds to emotion, repetition, and clarity. Consider Thomas Edison, not merely the inventor of the electric light, but the conqueror of inner darkness. When the world declared that what he envisioned was impossible, he did not debate them. He did not ask for permission. He burned with obsession. He held his mental picture with such unshakable precision that it became more real to him than the absence of evidence. Edison's secret was not in his laboratories, it was in his mental dominance. He refused to think thoughts that were not aligned with his vision. He refused to allow his internal world to be dictated by external opinions. His thoughts were not reactive, they were designed. He thought with precision. He imagined with authority. He directed the currents of his subconscious like a general leads an army. And because of this, the universe bent to his certainty. Henry Ford, too, understood this principle and lived by it. When critics mocked him, when bankers doubted him, when his own engineers told him a V8 engine in a single block could not be done, he replied, "Produce it anyway." And why? Because Ford had long since decided who he was. He did not allow others to install limits in his mind. He did not receive his beliefs from the crowd. He chose them, deliberately, relentlessly. Ford did not hope to become powerful. He believed he already was. And belief, when repeated with emotion and paired with consistent action, becomes reality. Now I must speak to you directly, and I ask you to listen not as a man who needs more information, but as a man who is ready to finally take the reins of his mind. From this day forward, you do not allow your thoughts to wander without leash or consequence. You do not permit old patterns to repeat themselves without challenge. You become the director of your mental stage. And when doubt arrives, as it surely will, you do not cower. You confront it with command. Speak now these affirmations aloud, not timidly, not once, but as a hammer strikes steel again and again, until the sound of truth becomes louder than the noise of memory. I am the type of man who commands his thoughts before the world can influence them. I am the type of man who chooses clarity over confusion, certainty over hesitation. I am the type of man who builds his future with the bricks of intentional thought. I am the type of man who recognizes the whispers of drift and replaces them with the voice of design. I am the type of man who trains his mind daily and permits no intruder to reside within it. Understand this. You cannot expect to become powerful while allowing weak thoughts to roam freely through your mind. You cannot become decisive while rehearsing confusion. You cannot rise while repeating the inner vocabulary of a man who crawls. And so you must speak differently. Each day you will rise and decide what you will think. You will not wait for emotion. You will lead it. You will repeat your chief aim with fire. You will speak your identity aloud until your body begins to move in alignment with it. You will not wait for belief. You will create it. This is the war of thought. And it is won not with battles, but with repetition. Repeat these final commands and let them be the scaffolding upon which your new self is built. My mind is not a sponge, it is a sword. I do not entertain thoughts that betray my vision. I design my mental state like a craftsman builds a cathedral. I am the type of man who installs power into his mind through repetition. I do not drift, I direct. This is how you win the war, not once, not occasionally, daily. There comes a moment in the life of every man where motion must give way to meaning, where effort must be replaced with finality, and where a single, irrevocable decision becomes the foundation upon which an entirely new life is built. Until this moment arrives, a man may try, he may wish, he may even act, but his transformation will remain unfinished. Why? Because he has not yet decided with enough sacred force to change his very nature. For transformation, my friend, is not a result of trying harder. It is the result of deciding deeper. Do not be deceived. Excuses are not reasons. They are symptoms. They are the native language of the man who has not yet decided. The man who has truly decided no longer requires explanation, no longer seeks consensus, no longer calculates the emotional cost of commitment. He simply moves because he no longer needs to consider the alternative. The man who still needs encouragement is not yet committed. The man who still seeks motivation has not yet made the final vow. You see, true decision does not leave room for options. It cuts off all escape. It removes the exit. And in doing so, it creates a new self. This is the error most men make. They confuse preference with decision. I'd like to be wealthy. I'd prefer to be strong. I hope to be consistent. These are not decisions. These are daydreams dressed in polite language. Real decision does not leave the door open. It seals it shut, nails it closed, and burns the key. The man who makes such a decision is not interested in appearing committed. He is committed even in solitude, even in obscurity, even in resistance. He no longer negotiates with his feelings, for his future has already been declared. The man who waits for certainty will never command it. He will be ruled forever by those who chose earlier and believed harder. The man who delays until he feels ready will be outpaced by the one who decided to become ready. For life does not favor the hesitant, it obeys the decided. And the moment you draw a line in your spirit, the moment you speak your vow aloud with such finality that your body aligns with your voice, that is when you begin to change. Andrew Carnegie, whom I studied for many years, did not ascend to the heights of industry by accident, and certainly not by ease. His rise began not with strategy, but with decision. A decision not only to dominate steel, but to build an empire for the benefit of mankind. He made the unshakable choice to become the wealthiest man in the world, not for vanity, but for purpose, and to give that wealth away to fuel progress, education, and peace. That was not a dream, it was a command. He chose the outcome, and then he became the man capable of fulfilling it. Do you understand? The result followed the decision, not the reverse. And what of Charles M. Schwab, Carnegie's right hand and eventual president of U.S. Steel? Schwab did not rise because he was the most experienced. He rose because he carried the decision to align with excellence. He did not need to be reminded to pursue greatness. He had already adopted it as his standard. In rooms where others felt inferior, Schwab stood with calm authority. Not because he was arrogant, but because he had already decided who he was. His behavior obeyed that decision, and so did his results. This is your hour to do the same. You must speak your decision aloud, clearly, and with such conviction that your past identity feels it like a funeral bell. The man you once were must die, not in sorrow, but in honor, for he carried you to this line. But he cannot cross it. The decision to transform is not an emotional high. It is the execution of a vow. And it must be made as if your life depends on it, because in truth it does. Not the survival of your body, but the birth of your becoming, the death of the excuse maker, the birth of the man who is no longer available for excuse. Speak now and say it like law. I am the type of man who has already decided. I am the type of man who no longer asks permission to evolve. I am the type of man who follows through on his vision with unbreakable finality. I am the type of man whose choices are not governed by mood, but by mission. I am the type of man who finishes what he starts, especially when no one is watching. This is not a practice in motivation. This is the signing of a contract, not on paper, but in spirit. And once it is signed, you no longer return to the language of delay. You no longer explain your inconsistency. You no longer need inspiration to act. You have decided, and now the world must bend. You may wonder, but Hill, what if I decide and I still feel doubt? And to that I say, you will. But that does not matter. The final decision does not erase fear, it outranks it. The man who has truly decided walks forward even as fear screams. Because fear has no voice where finality resides. And decision, when spoken with certainty and repeated with fire, becomes a greater force than hesitation ever could be. You must burn the old strategy of waiting to feel ready. You must now install the new belief, I am ready because I decided to be. This belief, when repeated aloud and paired with action, will begin to overwrite the old operating system, the one that delayed, explained, and wandered. Let today be the day you override it once and for all. Write down your vow. Speak it aloud until the words become instinct. And remember, a man is not known by what he hopes for. He is known by what he chooses without retreat. Let us conclude this part with your non-negotiable affirmations. Speak them now. Repeat them morning and night. Let them become your new law. I am the type of man who makes unshakable decisions. I do not require proof before I act. I act because I have decided. I am the type of man who removes escape routes and burns every bridge to hesitation. My decision is done. My vow is sacred. My actions obey the man I have already chosen to become. I am no longer the man who delays. I am the man who decides and dominates. And with that, the old voice fades. The decision stands, and the transformation begins. It is a bitter truth, but a necessary one. Most men do not fail because they are weak. They fail because their environment allows them to. The circle they move in, the voices they hear daily, the standards that surround them, the unspoken agreements in their homes and workplaces permits their mediocrity. And permission, when offered long enough, becomes identity. A man begins to believe that his half-effort is acceptable, that his delay is reasonable, that drifting, so long as it is disguised in busyness or politeness, is not truly failure. But let me tell you now, it is. Drift tolerated is destiny denied. You see, the enemy of your future is not always loud. He does not always wear horns or hurl insults. Often, he sits beside you at lunch. He smiles politely when you say you're still figuring it out. He nods gently when you say you'll begin tomorrow. He laughs softly when you speak of your vision as if it were just a dream. He does not resist you, he accepts you just as you are. And that, my friend, is how drift survives. It feeds not on resistance, but on quiet tolerance. A man's environment is not neutral. It is either fueling his fire or extinguishing it. Every conversation, every room, every repeated interaction is either sharpening you or softening you. And if you do not guard your gates with unflinching clarity, your mission will be reduced, not by direct attack, but by subtle erosion. Your standards will be diluted. Your focus will be scattered. Your vision will begin to blur. And before long, you will find yourself standing in a room full of people who no longer remind you of where you're going, but only reflect who you used to be. Let me be perfectly clear. You cannot transform while maintaining relationships that serve your former self. You cannot build a new future while still dining with the ghosts of your past. You must sever ties, not in bitterness, not in hatred, but in finality. You must cut off the voices that pacify your mediocrity, even if they are kind, even if they mean well. Because the most dangerous comfort is not the kind found in luxury, but the kind found in familiarity. The room that knows your name, but not your destiny. The friend who remembers your smile, but not your vow. The counsel you receive daily, whether explicit or implied, shapes your subconscious. It whispers when you are unsure. It echoes in the back of your mind when you hesitate. It becomes the default temperature of your decisions. And if your circle does not breathe fire into your focus, you will begin to match their climate. A man may say he is building greatness, but if he lives in the house of average, he will soon speak its language. That is why you must design your environment like an architect designs a fortress, with intention. with standards, with gates that do not open to everyone. Your environment must become a forge, not a lounge, a place that disciplines you into greatness, not comforts you into complacency. Let us speak of the mastermind. In all of my studies of the most successful men in history, I found this constant. They did not rise alone. While their initial vision may have been formed in solitude, their execution was strengthened by strategic alliance. Carnegie had Schwab, Ford had Edison. These men did not stumble into greatness. They surrounded themselves with others who demanded it. Their masterminds were not clubs of cheerleaders, they were councils of clarity, ruthless in truth, relentless in accountability. If a man declared an aim, they expected progress. If a man drifted, they confronted him, not to shame him, but to remind him who he vowed to become. The mastermind is not about how many friends you have. It is about who sharpens you. You must be willing to build a new circle, even if it begins with you alone. If no man around you shares your mission, then walk the path in solitude until you find one who does. In the meantime, simulate the mastermind by surrounding yourself with their minds, books, biographies, speeches. Let the words of Carnegie, Edison, Rockefeller, Lincoln, and Schwab become your daily environment. Let them speak into your subconscious until your standard begins to match theirs. You must replace the noise of the world with the language of excellence. And just as important as what you bring in is what you shut out. You must sever access to voices that kill momentum, not with malice, but with conviction. A man who constantly jokes about mediocrity has no place in your counsel. A friend who always has an excuse for why he hasn't started does not deserve your time. Not because you are better, but because your mission is sacred, and you will not defile it with compromise. Let this be your new command. My circle reflects my standards. From this day forward, you will no longer explain your vision to those who do not carry one. You will no longer seek approval from those who never required it of themselves. You will no longer dilute your direction for the sake of fitting in. You were not made to fit. You were made to forge. And you must begin by saying no. No to conversations that comfort delay. No to habits that feel familiar but produce nothing. No to proximity that drains your energy, even if it once made you feel seen. Because you are not here to be seen. You are here to build. Now speak your new identity aloud. Let it become armor against the influence of small counsel. I am the type of man who protects his mind like a fortress. I am the type of man who only allows voices into his life that multiply his mission. I am the type of man who surrounds himself with fire, not fluff. I am the type of man whose circle reflects his destiny, not his history. I am the type of man who does not explain his fire to those who fear it. Your environment, my friend, is not an accessory to your transformation. It is central to it. You will not rise in rooms that celebrate stagnation. You will not ascend while laughing with voices that mock discipline. Your new self must be constructed in new air, and that begins with the environment you build today. Guard your gates. You may repeat your morning rituals. Build your habits with strict discipline, and even take massive action every single day. But if the identity behind those actions remains unchanged, your transformation will eventually collapse. The most dangerous lie whispered into the ears of men today is this: that they can behave their way into greatness without becoming great. But let me tell you the truth plainly. Action is only sustainable when it is anchored in identity. A man may grind, hustle, move, and stretch, but if he still sees himself as the same man inside, he will one day snap back to the old self, as surely as a stretched rubber band returns to form. The subconscious mind, the hidden governor of behavior, emotion, and decision, does not respond to force. It responds to identity. It does not obey effort. It obeys expectation. An expectation is not built in emotion. It is built in repetition. Let this be seared into your consciousness. The man you believe yourself to be will always override the man you are trying to become. And so long as the self-image remains rooted in hesitation, weakness, or confusion, Even the boldest action will become temporary. I have studied thousands of men of wealth, power, influence, and in every case, the transformation began not with a new strategy, but with a new self-concept. Henry Ford, long before he was known to the world, moved like a man who had already changed the world. He spoke his vision with conviction. He carried himself with certainty, not arrogance, but clarity. While others were waiting for validation, Ford moved forward as if his future had already been granted. This is not arrogance, it is identity in command. You must understand that your subconscious is always listening. And if you speak the language of doubt, even in jest, it will record it. If you replay stories of failure, it will believe them. If you call yourself lazy, indecisive, or broken, even as a joke, it will obey. The subconscious knows no humor. It knows only repetition and feeling. And so if you wish to change your outer world, you must first rebuild your inner script. There is no tool more powerful than autosuggestion, the repeated, intentional, emotional declaration of who you are and what you are creating. In Think and Grow Rich, I declared it boldly. You do not get what you want, you get what you are. Autosuggestion is the mechanism through which you install who you are. But here is where most men fail. They speak affirmations without emotion. They repeat identity phrases without presence. They mouth the words, but they do not breathe them. And so the subconscious does not respond. But when a man feels his declaration, when he says it with fire in his belly and certainty in his tone, he begins to etch new grooves into his subconscious. And those grooves become the pathways through which his decisions, actions, and habits now flow. This is why I say, listen to this message more than once. Not because you need new information, but because each repetition burns deeper. What you missed the first time, your mind will grab the third. What sounded like inspiration before becomes identity after the seventh repetition. You do not hear truth once. You install it through hearing it often. Let me remind you now, autosuggestion is not positive thinking. It is not a pleasant idea spoken once in the mirror. It is daily identity warfare. You speak who you are before you feel like it. You declare your vision before there is evidence. You speak in alignment with your final form, not your current form. You rehearse the man you are becoming until you behave like him by instinct. Consider the example of Elbert Hubbard, a man of tremendous inner fire, whose writings and actions were not shaped by applause, but by creed. Hubbard did not wait for others to affirm his direction. He was not a leaf in the wind, moved by trends or opinions. He lived by what he believed to be truth, and his every act reflected that inner alignment. You could not move Hubbard with pressure, for he was anchored to internal principles. And this is what you must now become. Not a man who needs the world to mirror back his greatness, but one who knows who he is before the world even notices. It is this exact shift from external approval to internal certainty that marks the dividing line between the drifter and the builder, the beggar of success and the architect of it, the man who waits and the man who commands. You must now rehearse this new identity with absolute seriousness. Begin each day not by asking, "What must I do?" but by declaring, "Who am I becoming?" And speak the answer aloud, not once, but until you feel it vibrate in your bones. Stand in front of the mirror, not to admire yourself, but to program yourself. Let us now do exactly that. Repeat these words aloud, not as suggestion, but as instruction. I am the type of man who builds without needing applause. I am the type of man whose word to himself is law. I am the type of man who speaks identity until it becomes instinct. I am the type of man who moves like a king before the crown is visible. I am the type of man who commands his destiny from the inside out. Now pause. Say them again, this time with more power. This is not poetry. This is programming. You may feel resistance the first few times. That is natural. The old self will whisper, "But you're not him yet." And you must reply, "I am becoming him now." For that is the entire game. You are not reacting to your past, you are rehearsing your future. And each time you declare your identity, your behavior begins to obey that new command. Remember, the reason you must listen to this message daily is not for entertainment. It is for installation. You are building a new man, and that man cannot be installed in one day. He must be forged in fire daily, spoken into existence daily, walked as if he already lives daily. You are not repeating affirmations for hope. You are doing it for alignment, so that your actions, your words, your posture, your decisions all reflect the man you say you are. Speak once, and you will be inspired. Speak daily, and you will be rebuilt. Now let us seal this chapter with one final command. I am the type of man whose identity precedes his results. I do not wait for success. I expect it. I do not ask the world who I am. I tell it. I am no longer available for identities that shrink my power. I rise daily with my name, my aim, and my nature aligned. This is the power of identity. It is not merely a mindset, it is the source code of transformation. All action flows from it, all discipline is anchored in it, all results are shaped by it. And now you know the truth. Faith, when rightly understood, is not a feeling. It is not a coincidence. It is not the privilege of the fortunate. Faith, when rightly understood, is the force of creation, not outside of you, but within. It does not require the approval of others. It does not beg for evidence. Faith is built like a furnace, stoked with repetition, sealed by emotion, and directed by will. It bends reality not by force of circumstance, but by internal insistence. The man who waits to believe until the evidence is clear, until the critics are silent, until the fears are quiet, is not a man of faith. He is a man of delay, a prisoner of logic, and a servant of what already is. And no man can create what will be while enslaved to what is. You must now understand, faith is repetition, not luck. Faith is trained. Faith is built. Faith is the emotional repetition of thought, declared with such consistency and such power that the subconscious no longer distinguishes between what is visible and what is envisioned. This is the law, and it is the law that every great man obeys, whether he realizes it or not. Let us take the case of Thomas Edison. There was no blueprint, there was no instruction, there were only failures, 10,000 of them, if the stories are to be believed. And yet through every failure, Edison held one thing intact, his inner picture of light. He saw it long before it appeared in the laboratory. He heard the sound of electricity before wires ever carried it. He believed when no man dared to agree. That belief was not a fleeting hope. It was a conviction born of repetition. He saw it. He felt it. He spoke of it daily until his very body obeyed the vision. What you call fantasy, Edison called fact in progress. And he understood what few men ever do, that faith bends reality not because of superstition, but because of internal gravity. The more you rehearse an idea with feeling, the more your mind begins to move in its direction. Your thoughts form decisions, your decisions shape action, and your actions build evidence. The process begins not with proof, but with practice. Likewise, consider Henry Ford. He did not wait for the market to validate him. He did not require the approval of newspapers, friends, or financiers. He declared, "I will build a car for the multitudes." He declared this when the world scoffed at the notion of an automobile for the working man. He declared it when money was scarce, when people doubted, when every circumstance cried out for surrender. And yet Ford persisted, not with arrogance, but with identity. He spoke his vision aloud, again and again, until his mind could no longer entertain the possibility of failure. Men called him mad, but faith does look like madness to the man ruled by fear. Ford was not mad, he was certain, and that certainty became contagious. It attracted engineers, investors, and partners, and the very world that mocked him became the world that rode in his machines. Faith is not passive belief. Faith is internal persuasion built through emotional suggestion. I declared in Think and Grow Rich, and I say again now, faith is the only known antidote to failure. And the way to build it is not to wait. It is to rehearse the man you are becoming until you feel him rising within you. Understand this. You do not wait to believe. You speak until belief arrives. You do not earn faith through results. You build faith through repetition with emotion. There was a time when I too had no evidence. I sat alone, broke, mocked by former colleagues, misunderstood by nearly all. And yet I had one tool, the manuscript that lived inside of me. I carried the message of definite purpose and autosuggestion with no promise of publishing, no promise of reward. I wrote the law of success not in comfort, but in conviction. The only thing louder than my fears was the voice I repeated every single day. That voice said, "This message is needed. This book is essential. This vision is real." The world will often tell you to be realistic, but listen carefully. Realism is only realism to those who do not believe. It is code for do not rise. When you hear it, hear instead your next opportunity to deepen your decision. Faith must be practiced. It must be installed. And the method by which you do this is simple: visualization and identity rehearsal. Do not mistake this for childish dreaming. Visualization is not entertainment. It is mental construction. When you see yourself performing your vision, living it, standing in it, becoming it, you are training your subconscious to accept it as reality. The subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between the imagined and the experienced, but it can tell the difference between belief and doubt, and that difference is shaped by one thing: emotion. And so each morning, before the world speaks to you, you must speak to yourself. See the man you are building. Feel what he feels. Say what he says. Walk through your day as if you are already him. This is not pretense. It is identity installation. Now I will give you the words that must accompany your vision. Speak them with power. Speak them with repetition. Speak them until belief becomes your default state of being. I am the type of man who believes before the evidence arrives. I am the type of man who walks by inner vision, not outer noise. I am the type of man who repeats his future until it becomes instinct. I am the type of man who trains belief with fire and focus. I am the type of man whose faith bends the world to match his will. Say these aloud now, again, until you feel them. You do not speak affirmations to trick yourself. You speak affirmations to instruct yourself, to build the emotional current of faith so strong that your doubts cannot breathe inside it. Faith is not a luxury. It is the architecture of reality. It is not a gift for the religious. It is the law for the powerful. It is the mental code that separates the weak from the strong, the drifter from the designer, the victim from the creator. And now you understand it. Say this one more time. My faith is not borrowed. It is built. My vision is not fantasy. It is future in rehearsal. I train belief until it overrides fear. I walk in identity until it commands reality. I am no longer waiting. I believe now. This is how you bend the world. Not with charm, not with chance, not with chatter, but with unshakable identity, unbreakable focus, and rehearsed faith. When your mind believes, your actions obey. And when your actions obey, the world must follow. That is not magic. That is law. Action is the bridge between the invisible and the tangible. It is the force that takes your purpose out of your mind and shapes it into reality. No idea, no matter how powerful, has ever built an empire without being put into motion. A man may possess all the faith in the world, but if he does not move, he is still a prisoner of theory. Understand this: motion is the destroyer of fear. Doubt, hesitation, and all the poisonous whispers of the enemy within, they do not live in action. They survive in the shadows of delay. The moment you move with purpose, Fear has no footing. Like a fire deprived of oxygen, it dies. Every time you move in spite of resistance, you build evidence that you are the kind of man who does not ask permission from his emotions. Doubt thrives only in men who hesitate. Hesitation is the breeding ground of fear. It is the laboratory where the worst versions of your imagination are given power. But movement silences the inner critic. It commands the subconscious. It says, I do not wait to feel ready, I move, and readiness meets me on the path. The builder, the man who reshapes his life with vision, faith, and clarity, must adopt execution as creed. His highest loyalty is not to comfort nor to approval, but to follow through. It is in movement, not in mood, that destiny is forged. Every builder, every captain of industry, every man whose name is carved in the history of human achievement understood this. You must act when the fire is hot, and even when it's not. Let me speak now of Charles M. Schwab, one of the greatest builders of American steel. Schwab did not rise by chance. He was a man of deliberate execution. Andrew Carnegie saw in him a force, a man who not only thought with clarity, but who moved with purpose. Schwab could take a concept and push it into form, not next week, not after discussion, but now. He had the rare quality of finishing what he started, and he made decisions not in a haze of emotional comfort, but in the forge of necessity. It was Schwab who once took a faltering steel division and, through boldness, not perfection, transformed it into one of the most profitable sectors in Carnegie's empire. When asked about the secret of his success, Schwab never cited luck. He cited decisive action, done quickly, done relentlessly, and done regardless of doubt. Abraham Lincoln, too, is remembered not merely because of what he believed, but because of what he did. In moments of great national crisis, Lincoln did not hope things would improve. He acted. When the nation tore itself in two, he stood firm, not because he had no fear, but because he refused to let fear write the next chapter. He issued proclamations, made appointments, signed bills, and moved the Union toward its highest principles, all under the immense pressure of war, division, and personal pain. The key was always the same. He acted before he was ready. He understood that delay, even when politically safe, was spiritually fatal. And his legacy was not born from perfect decisions, but from relentless motion in the service of a vision. You may not be facing a war nor leading a steel empire, but the principle remains unchanged. Do not let mood determine movement. The man who waits for motivation to act will always be ruled. The man who acts in alignment with purpose becomes a ruler of his schedule, his business, his mind. The illusion of modern weakness is this: I'll act when I feel better. But feeling does not produce motion. Motion produces feeling. A man in motion generates energy. A man in stillness accumulates excuses. If you wake with hesitation, move your body. If you're caught in mental noise, make a decision. If you feel fear, take a step toward the very thing you wish to avoid. Let us also consider Henry Ford, who did not wait for perfect circumstances to begin manufacturing the automobile. When others said it could not be done, he began. While others waited for funding, he built with what he had. He was not possessed by a need for the perfect blueprint. He simply took the next step. And that next step led to another and another, until the world watched the first car roll off a production line that never stopped. Thomas Edison, too, was a man of motion. When one approach failed, he did not sit in despair. He moved. And in moving, he uncovered new truths. He did not romanticize the process. He was a worker as much as he was an inventor. He believed that results belong not to the most inspired, but to the most persistent. Every new test was movement. Every failure, a step. Every experiment, a declaration, I am still moving. That same spirit lived in Theodore Roosevelt, a man who did not wait for consensus to strike. His reputation was not one of careful perfectionism, but of decisive boldness. He understood that men are remembered not for their caution, but for their courage under uncertainty. And now I must speak to you, the man listening to this, because you too have heard the voices of delay. You have perhaps said, "I'll start tomorrow," or "when I feel more confident," or "when I have more time." These are the lies of the passive self, the self that must now be abandoned like a worn-out shell. You will not wait to be inspired. You will inspire yourself through movement. You will not wait for clarity. You will find it while in motion. You will not ask the world for permission. You will give yourself orders, and then you will obey. Now repeat after me. I am the type of man who moves regardless of mood. I am the type of man who kills doubt with action. I am the type of man who does not ask fear for permission. I am the type of man who takes one step forward every single day. I am the type of man who executes his mission, no matter how he feels. These are not hopeful statements. They are installations. Each time you say them, you are programming your subconscious to follow new laws. Laws not of feeling, but of force. Laws not of hesitation, but of decision. Do not confuse speed with recklessness. I do not ask you to rush blindly. I ask you to move daily with intention. There is a difference between mindless speed and mission-driven movement. The former is chaos. The latter is creation. Here is a law. One major move per day will change your life in 365 days. You do not need to do 10,000 things. You need to do the most important thing, consistently. You are not required to finish every battle today. You are required to advance even 1 inch. That inch repeated becomes territory. Territory becomes momentum. Momentum becomes power. Let the others wait. Let the others wander. Let the others talk. You will move. This is what separates a man of purpose from a man of excuse. This is what separates a memory from a legacy. This is what separates who you were from who you will become. Now move, even if you feel resistance, especially if you feel resistance, because you are not your mood. You are not your doubt. You are your movement. Many men begin, few men finish. And the tragedy is not that they lacked the strength, but that they chose comfort when completion was required. The world is not littered with unfinished talent. It is littered with unfinished men. Beginning is easy. Starting holds romance. There is a certain energy in imagining what might be. But it is finishing that separates the dreamer from the dominator. Completion is the altar where discipline is tested. It is the furnace where your desire is either burned away or forged into unbreakable will. You must understand this clearly. The most dangerous pain a man can feel is the pain of almost. The almost finished book, the almost launched business, the almost taken leap. These are the ghosts that haunt men into old age. These are the quiet regrets whispered at night when all distractions are gone and a man is left to account for who he chose to become. A man who does not finish what he starts trains his mind to distrust his own word. And the man who cannot trust himself becomes a beggar of outside validation. He becomes addicted to applause instead of results. He becomes a slave to false starts. He becomes a man of fragments, not legacy. You will not become this man. You must now see your unfinished tasks as spiritual liabilities, not simply tasks left undone, but commitments abandoned. And with every unfinished work, a part of your power leaks. But the opposite is also true. Every act of completion, no matter how small, builds internal conquest. Completion sharpens your edge. It sculpts your identity. It creates momentum, the most intoxicating force known to the builder. There is no feeling like that of a man who completes. He walks differently. His eyes are sharper. His decisions are cleaner. Why? Because he does not entertain internal shame. He is not carrying the weight of things left undone. He lives light because he is built heavy. Let me speak now of Andrew Carnegie, the man whose name became synonymous with steel. But his greatest achievement was not simply in the accumulation of wealth, it was in the completion of a vow. Carnegie declared not only that he would become the wealthiest man of his time, but that he would give it all away for the advancement of civilization. Many men promise such things when they are poor, But Carnegie kept this vow even when it meant transferring millions he could have kept back into the hands of the world. He completed the mission. He built libraries, funded peace initiatives, invested in education and science, and in doing so, he finished the vision that began decades prior. It was not comfort that drove him. It was completion. He had written his definite chief aim, and he walked with it to the very end. Carnegie was not alone in this pursuit. Every great man, without exception, understands the sacred nature of the finish line. They are not casual with their word. They are not emotional with their execution. They treat promises to themselves with the same weight a soldier treats his oath. And perhaps even more importantly, they surround themselves with men who push them to finish. Let us now speak of the mastermind, not as a concept, but as a necessity. Your environment is not neutral. It will either inspire your completion or it will permit your delay. Most men do not drift from weakness. They drift because no one around them demands more. You must surround yourself with those who remind you that unfinished dreams are a sin against your potential. Let your circle be composed of men who do not flatter your delay but challenge your delay. Let them ask you with boldness, "You said you would finish, so where is the product?" Let them remind you that the world is changed not by intentions, but by finished work. A true mastermind does not tolerate excuses. It does not applaud partial effort. It speaks with fire, and it expects fire in return. Carnegie had such a circle. He surrounded himself with men like Charles M. Schwab, who executed with urgency and who never confused effort with outcome. This is the kind of alliance you must build, not a gathering of friends, but a coalition of finishers. Now hear me on this. If you are the only one holding yourself accountable, you are in danger. Because when fatigue comes, and it will come, you will be tempted to coast. And coasting is death in slow motion. But when another man is watching, when another builder is expecting your finish, when your mastermind has heard your commitment aloud, you rise not only for yourself, but for the vision you spoke. This is why you must speak your intentions aloud, not to the world, but to your circle. Declare them. Say, "This is what I am building. This is the deadline. This is the standard." Then let them hold you to it, not to shame you, but to protect your destiny from erosion. A man who completes daily becomes addicted to completion. He begins to measure time differently. He stops entertaining tasks that have no reward. He says no more often. He kills distraction quickly. And he begins to move through his day like a general, not a servant. Now take this truth and etch it deep into your identity. You are not the man who almost finishes. You are not the man who plans to. You are the man who finishes. Say it with me now. I am the type of man who finishes what he starts. I am the type of man who does not need to be reminded. I am the type of man who keeps his word as law. I am the type of man who completes daily. I am the type of man who does not delay destiny for comfort. Let these affirmations be more than inspiration. Let them be commands to your subconscious. Say them again and again until quitting feels unnatural, until incompletion feels like a betrayal, until the act of finishing becomes so familiar that even your smallest task is treated like a sacred vow. And let us be honest. There will be days where finishing feels unnecessary, days when good enough is tempting, days when no one is watching. These are the days that separate men who speak power from men who live it. Completion is not for when it is easy. Completion is for when it matters. And it always matters. The world will reward you not for what you began, but for what you finished, the contracts you signed, the product you launched, the habit you held, the body you built, the character you carved through daily repetition. And now you know this law. Unfinished work collects interest in the currency of self-doubt. But finished work builds equity in the empire of your becoming. So complete what you said you would. Finish what you promised. Show yourself and your mastermind that your word is not soft. It is a sword. Then sharpen it daily, because you are not building dreams, you are finishing them. Close your eyes for a moment. Do not glance around the room. Do not reach for distraction. Go inward. See him, the man on day 365. He is you, yet something about him has changed. Not just the way he walks or the depth in his gaze. It's the stillness in his decision. It's the calm in his clarity. It is the weight of completion he now wears as armor. He is no longer chasing identity. He has become it. And now it is time for him to speak, not for ceremony, not for poetry, but to close the loop. When a man begins a transformation of this magnitude, 365 days of design, repetition, and fire, it is not enough to start with a vow. One must end with a return letter, one written from the future self, to the one who had the courage to begin. And this is not fantasy. It is faith in final form. It is the echo of day one spoken through the voice of day 365. A voice stronger, sharper, less hesitant. A voice that now speaks with the full authority of having followed through. This is what the world does not understand about personal power. It is not loud in the beginning. It grows louder as the days are obeyed. The man who once whispered, "I hope I can change," now speaks with the thunder of "I have become." And now that man speaks to the man who started. Thank you. Thank you for not waiting. Thank you for refusing to postpone your greatness another year. You didn't need to know the whole path. You only needed to decide. And that decision, though silent, though made alone, has now echoed across every day since. I remember your fear. I remember the pull to delay, the temptation to wait for more clarity, but you didn't. You spoke your chief aim. You repeated it when you didn't feel like it. You designed your days. You built rituals from fire. And now I walk in the reward. Because of you, I no longer drift. Because of you, I no longer hesitate. Because of you, I no longer require permission to act. I move with power now. I speak as a man of standard. I am no longer entertained by excuses because I have outgrown the need for them. I remember when you wrote the first vow. I remember the uncertainty in your voice. But I also remember the moment you repeated it with fire. That was the day I was born, not in form, but in potential. And every repetition since has built me, shaped me, forged me. You burned the old identity, and I am what rose from the ashes. I am not perfect, but I am whole. I am not always certain, but I am unyielding. I am not a man who tries, I am a man who finishes. The rituals you started, they are now instinct. The affirmations you spoke, they are now my default voice. The standards you set, they are now my spine. I do not carry the pain of delay. I carry the pride of delivery. I do not ask the world who I am. I declare it daily. You wrote your way out. You rewrote the script. You installed a man the old world could not recognize, and now that world sees me and wonders where I came from. I came from discipline. I came from silence. I came from you on day one. I honor you not as a memory, but as the man who made a choice. And I carry that choice with me not as pressure, but as identity. We are no longer the same man. And that is the greatest compliment I can give you. Signed, the man you built. Day 365. And now the loop is closed. The vow that began in fire has returned in form. And this return letter is more than reflection. It is proof. Proof that repetition works. That identity can be sculpted. That the man who begins in weakness can finish in unstoppable strength. But this return must now be sealed. Through affirmations that are no longer theory, but testimony. Say them aloud. Say them with force, not as a man who hopes, but as a man who knows. I am the type of man who is unrecognizable from his former self. I am the type of man who does not drift. I dominate my direction. I am the type of man who makes excuses feel foreign. I am the type of man who keeps his word to others, and especially to himself. I am the type of man who rewrites his future daily with action and fire. This is your final vow, the one that does not beg the year to change you, but commands the year to obey your decision. And when you speak it, remember this: day one was not the test. Day 365 is the witness. This is what they do not teach in schools or offer in books wrapped in soft encouragement. That true transformation has a voice, and it sounds like the man who followed through. Now say this aloud, not just for today. Say it every day forward, for this is not the end. This is the beginning of a life lived without compromise. I am no longer available for my former identity. I am no longer tempted by delay. I am no longer the man who almost did. I am the man who finished. I do not wait for the world to recognize me. I declare my presence. I do not ask for results. I earn them through repetition and relentless belief. I am the man I once only imagined, and I will never go back. Now fold this vow not into paper, but into memory, into action, into your voice, your calendar, your morning, your midnight. For this vow is not fragile. It is not temporary. It is you in written form. You are not trying to become him. You already are. This is the final moment, not of the speech, but of hesitation. You have crossed through fire, through identity destruction and reconstruction, through war in the mind and rebirth of the will, through decision, discipline, and dominion. Now there is but one command left. Rise. Let the world drift. You will not. Let others scroll through hours of noise. Repeat the same complaints. Find new words to justify their old weaknesses. You will not. You have built the code. You have obeyed the vow. You have burned the old script and written a new standard in its place. The world will try to invite you back into softness, into delay, into aimless motion that looks like effort but produces nothing, into a rhythm of some day that never arrives. But listen to me now. Drifting is death, and you are not available for death. Not the death of your body, but the death of your potential. You have declared too much. You have sacrificed too deeply. You have repeated truth for too long to betray yourself now. You are a man reborn, not by chance, but by command. And this command from this day forward is no longer spoken once and forgotten. It is spoken daily until the world is forced to conform to your new vibration. Let others live by mood. You will live by standard. Let others explain their lack of progress. You will walk forward without explanation, because the man who builds does not ask for applause. He builds because he must, because identity demands it. And if they ask what happened to you, if they ask where the old version went, you do not speak of motivation. You speak of ritual. You speak of repetition. You speak of the vow you made in silence and lived through fire. But more than that, you show them in your walk, in your presence. In the results that do not beg to be seen, they announce themselves. You will not explain your transformation. You will live it. Let them talk, let them joke, let them wonder, let them scroll, let them wait. You will rise, and to end this, we now cement it with 10 affirmations, not borrowed, not theoretical, but forged from the script that brought you here. These are your weapons. Speak them not once, but twice each. Let them become rhythm. Let them burn. 1. I am the type of man who finishes what he starts. I am the type of man who finishes what he starts. 2. I do not drift. I design every day with precision. I do not drift. I design every day with precision. 3. I do not ask for permission to rise. I command it from myself. I do not ask for permission to rise. I command it from myself. 4. I am not motivated. I am programmed by purpose. I am not motivated. I am programmed by purpose. 5. I am no longer available for delay, doubt, or distraction. I am no longer available for delay, doubt, or distraction. 6. I walk with presence and build with discipline. I walk with presence and build with discipline. 7. I do not need the world to understand. I only need to act. I do not need the world to understand. I only need to act. 8. My environment does not shape me. I shape it. My environment does not shape me. I shape it. 9. I am the type of man who creates more than he consumes. I am the type of man who creates more than he consumes. 10. I am already the man I once hoped to become. I am already the man I once hoped to become. Repeat these every day, morning, night, before action, after victory, during resistance. Let them become your operating code. For the man who repeats truth with fire is the man who becomes unshakable. And now I leave you with this, burned into your mind. You are not who you were. You are not who you were told to be. You are not who the past tried to program. You are a builder, a designer, a dominator of days, a master of momentum, a man whose voice no longer wavers in the face of old excuses. You are not waiting on results. You are already walking in them. Now go and let the world drift. You will rise.